Hi everybody, it's Crystal. So today I have a stitch tutorial for you. It's a very beautiful stitch. It's very easy and it's just a one row repeat. It'd be great for a beginner crocheter, that knows how to do the basic stitches, and great for the advanced as well. Like I mentioned, it is a one row repeat and it does look the same on both sides. It's a nice squishy fabric. Make anything great. You can make anything great with it. Now, I know many of you who know a lot about stitches will be looking at this and think that this is either the bean stitch or the Elizabeth stitch. And you would be correct in thinking that, but it is different. It is a variation on those stitches. This is a loop stitch variation is what it is. Although it is very similar to those two stitches, it is a bit different, and I'm going to show you how to do it so you can make anything that you'd like. It's a very nice thick comfy fabric. So this swatch here was made with the Red Heart Super Saver yarn, which is an acrylic 4-weight. I'm not sure what color, I'm sorry about that, but now do remember that this is just a stitch tutorial, so I'll be showing you how to make that variation on that loop stitch. And you can make whatever you want with it, and you can use any yarn and any hook that you desire. For that particular yarn, though, I did use a size I hook. So this stitch is done in any even number of stitches. So whether you're making a blanket, you just chain to the amount. You make your chain as long as you want your blanket, and as long as your stitch is an even number. Same goes for whatever you make. If you're making a scarf, you chain however big you want your scarf, a hot pad, anything that you want to make, an even number of stitches. All right, and it's very easy. Like I said, it is a one row repeat, but we do have to do 2 setup rows. It's worked on a base chain of single crochet. So row 1, once you get your even number of stitches here, we're going to do a single crochet in the second chain from our hook. So we don't count the one that's on our hook. There's 1 and there's 2. In that second one, we're going to do a single crochet. Just like that. And now we're going to work across, and we're going to be putting 1 single crochet in every stitch for the length of the chain for row 1. Just like this. So row 1 is 1 single in every stitch until you make it to the end of the row. Just like that. I'll see you in a second. Alright, so once you make it to the end of row 1, you will have 1 stitch less than what your chain was. So since you began in an even number of stitches, at the end of row 1, you will have an odd number. All right, so that's what you'll need. All right, so we're going to go ahead and start row 2, and this is how I'm going to show you how to do that variation of that loop stitch. So we're going to chain 1 and turn our work. Now that chain 1 does not count as a stitch. All right, it doesn't count as anything. And we're going to be working back into this very first stitch here. We're going to go into it without yarning over, and we're going to draw up a loop. And that leaves 2 loops on our hook. Now we're going to yarn over for the second part of this stitch and go into the next stitch and draw up a loop. And that leaves 4 loops on our hook. We're going to yarn over and go through all 4 and chain 1. Now you don't want to chain 1 too tight because we will be working back into that stitch. Now that is how the variation of this particular loop stitch is done. So we'll go ahead and do it again. Remember, it's worked over 2 stitches. So we're going to go into the first one without yarning over and draw up a loop, which will leave us 2 loops on our hook. And then we're going to yarn over and go into the next one and draw up a loop. And that will leave us 4 loops on our hook. We're going to yarn over, go through all 4 loops, and then we're going to chain 1 again. And this is what we're going to repeat across the row. So let's go ahead and do it again. Remember that loop stitch is worked over 2 stitches. So first one, we do not yarn over. We just go into it and draw up a loop. which leaves us 2 loops on our hook. And then the second part we yarn over and go into the next stitch and draw up a loop, which will leave us 4 loops on our hook. We're going to yarn over and go through all 4 and chain 1 again, just like that. We're going to do this all the way across. So again, go into the next stitch without yarning over and draw up a loop, and that'll leave us 2 loops on our hook. And then the next part we're going to yarn over and go into the next stitch and draw up a loop, which will leave us 4 loops on our hook. And then yarn over again and go through all 4 loops and chain 1. So I'm going to go ahead and repeat this pattern all the way across until I get near the end of the row. So always remember, it's worked over 2 stitches. The first one you do not yarn over, and then the second half you do yarn over and then draw up a loop, which will leave you your 4 loops. Yarn over and go through all 4 and chain 1. Just always make sure that chain 1 is not too tight, and that's what it starts to look like. So I'm going to go ahead and I finish this out, and I'll meet you at the end of row 2. Alright, so when you make it to the end of row 2, you should have 1 stitch that remains. You want to make sure you chain 1 after your loop stitch variation, and we're going to end the row by single crocheting into it, just like that. That ends row 2. Now row 3 is the repeat row. It's the row that we will keep repeating until we get to our desired size. So we will chain 1 and turn our work. Chain 1 does not count as a stitch. Now this is pretty similar to what we just did. But we're going to be working in the chain 1 spaces and on top of our loop variations that we did. So the first stitch is always done the same way. We go into it without yarning over and draw up a loop. And then we're going to yarn over and go into the chain space that's right next to it and draw up a loop. And that gives us our 4 loops. We're going to yarn over and go through all 4. And again, chain 1, but don't chain too tight because we got to be able to see that to go into it. Now we're going to start the repeat of row 3. So we're going to go into the top of the loop stitch variation, which is right here. You can see it. It kind of looks like a little bitty triangle. It's pretty open and visible. So we're just going to go into that without yarning over and draw up a loop. And then we're going to yarn over, and right in between the loop stitches, there's a chain 1. We're going to yarn over and go into that chain 1. Draw up a loop, 4 loops, yarn over and go through all 4, and chain 1. So that's how this is done. It's very, very simple. So again, we look for our next loop stitch right here. It's pretty visible. Like I said, it looks kind of like a triangle hanging off the side. We don't yarn over when we go into that one, and we draw up a loop. And then in between the loop stitches, there's that chain 1 space. We're going to yarn over and go into that space and draw up a loop. And there's your 4 loops. Yarn over and go through all 4 and chain 1. And we're going to repeat this all the way across. So again, right there, we go into that loop stitch there without yarning over and drawing up. And then we're going to yarn over and go in between them, because that is our chain 1 space. Draw up a loop, 4 loops, yarn over and go through all 4 and chain 1. Now the difference between this and the Elizabeth stitch is the Elizabeth stitch is worked all into the same stitch. It isn't worked over 2 stitches. The same with the bean stitch. This particular loop stitch variation is worked over 2 stitches, which gives a little bit more of a zigzag effect than the other 2. So let's do that again. We're just going to repeat this all the way across. So we go into the loop stitch without yarning over and draw up a loop. And then we're going to yarn over and go into that chain 1 space, which is right in between the 2 loop stitches. Draw up 4 loops, yarn over, go through all 4 and chain 1. Now I'm going to go ahead and repeat this pattern all the way across until I get to the end of row 3 right there. Sometimes that chain 1, it tightens up. Even though you try not to make it tight, it still tightens up, just like that. Go into the loop stitch, draw up, and then we yarn over and go into the chain 1 space, which is the space between the 2 loop stitches. Draw up 4 loops, yarn over and go through all 4 and chain 1. So I'm going to repeat this until I get near the end, and I'll see you at the end of row 3. All right, when you make it to the end of row 3, I just did a loop stitch over these 2 stitches and I chained 1, and this is what we have left. It looks like we have a loop stitch and there's a chain 1 there. All right, what we're going to do is we're not going to go into the top of that loop stitch. Make sure you chain 1 after this one. We're going to single crochet into that chain 1, that turning chain. That just helps keep your sides straighter by going into that and single crocheting. And that's how you end the row, and that's how you end every row from here on out. So that is the repeat. Row 3 is the repeat. So we'll go ahead and for row 4 we're going to repeat row 3. We're going to chain 1 and turn our work, and it always starts out the same. We go into that first single crochet without yarning over and we draw up a loop, and then we're going to yarn over and go into that chain 1 that's right next to it and draw up a loop. 4 loops, yarn over and go through all 4 and chain 1. Again, we go into the next loop stitch, which, like I said, is pretty visible. It's kind of just on the side there. Don't yarn over, draw up a loop, and then we yarn over and go into the chain 1 space, which always seems to tighten up, but it's between the 2 loop stitches there. Draw up a loop, 4 loops, yarn over and go through all 4 and chain 1. So I'm just repeating on row 4 what we just did on row 3. Very, very easy once you get the hang of it. It's super simple and it works up really, really fast. I mean, you could whip up pretty scarf or anything with this super fast. Incorporate it with other stitches. So many things you could do. Remember, it's work. Just always remember this particular stitch is worked over 2 stitches, which is when you're on the repeat row, the top of the loop stitch from the previous row. You go into it without yarning over, and then you yarn over and go into the chain 1 space, which is in between the 2 loop stitches. Draw up a loop, and that's going to leave you 4 loops. Yarn over and go through all 4 and chain 1. Now I'm going to go ahead, I just repeat in row 3. I'm going to do this until I get to the end, and I'll show you how to end it one more time. All right, I'm coming to the end of row 4, which is just a repeat of row 3. And again, I just did a loop stitch, and I make sure you chain 1 afterwards, and here at the end you're left with 1 loop stitch and a chain 1 and a chain 1, or a turning chain, chain 1. Always single crochet into that turning chain, not the loop stitch, only because that will keep your single crochet into it like that. That will keep your edges much more straight. And that's it. And after a few repeats, it starts to look like this. It's very beautiful, and it has a very nice zigzag effect. Super easy, and I'm serious. You can whip this stitch up quick, and it's so squishy as well. So I hope you enjoy my tutorial. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and check out all my tutorials. I have so many. I have anything that you could ever want to make and multiples of them. And if you could leave a comment below, that always helps me out. You know, gotta feed that algorithm monster. Thanks everybody for watching. All right, take care. Bye guys.